Welcome to Emergency Insights. I'm James Carter. Today, we're discussing superwarfarin poisoning. We're joined by Dr. Emily Wang, a toxicology expert, to shed light on this serious condition. Dr. Wang, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, James. It's a pleasure to be here. This is a critical topic for anyone in emergency medicine or critical care.
Let's dive right in. What are superwarfarins, and why are they so much more dangerous than standard warfarin?
Superwarfarins are potent, long-acting anticoagulant rodenticides. The key difference lies in their chemical structure and pharmacokinetics. They have a much longer half-life than standard warfarin, often lasting weeks to months in the body. This means they can cause a prolonged, severe coagulopathy, making them far more difficult to manage.
That prolonged effect sounds challenging. Could you walk us through the mechanism of action and how it leads to these dramatic bleeding presentations?
Absolutely. Both superwarfarins and standard warfarin inhibit the enzyme vitamin K epoxide reductase. This enzyme is crucial for recycling vitamin K, which is essential for the synthesis of key clotting factors, factors 2, 7, 9, and 10. When this process is blocked, the body's stores of active vitamin K are depleted. Without sufficient active vitamin K, the synthesis of these clotting factors is impaired, leading to a profound coagulopathy and an extremely high risk of bleeding. The long half-life of superwarfarins means this impairment can persist for a very long time.
Given that mechanism, what kind of clinical presentation should an emergency physician be looking for, and is there a typical time course for symptoms to appear?
The time course is a key diagnostic clue. Symptoms don't appear immediately. Typically, the onset of bleeding is delayed, often 12 to 48 hours after exposure. The real bleeding episodes, which can be severe, might not manifest until 3 to 9 days post-ingestion. Patients often present with painless but severe bleeding from multiple sites, such as hematuria, gastrointestinal bleeding, or unexplained bruising. A key feature is recurrent, difficult-to-control bleeding due to the agent's extended half-life. It's the unexplained and disproportionate nature of the bleeding that should raise suspicion.
Once you suspect superwarfarin poisoning, what's the essential lab work, and are there any specific tests to confirm the diagnosis?
An high index of suspicion is paramount. The initial lab findings are often striking. You'll see a markedly prolonged prothrombin time and a very high INR, often above 5, sometimes even well into double digits. The APTT will also be elevated. A mixing study, which corrects with normal plasma, points toward a factor deficiency rather than an inhibitor. While specific toxicological assays for superwarfarins in blood or urine can confirm the diagnosis, they aren't always readily available. The most important thing is not to delay treatment while waiting for a confirmatory test. The diagnosis is primarily clinical, supported by these characteristic lab findings.
Let's move to management, which seems to be the most critical part of this. What's the immediate management plan, especially for a patient with active bleeding?
For a patient with active bleeding, stabilization is the top priority. That means controlling the bleeding with local measures and providing blood product support. Fresh frozen plasma, or FFP, or Prothrombin Complex Concentrate, PCC, are essential to rapidly replete the clotting factors. For anemia, give packed red blood cells. The cornerstone of specific treatment, however, is high-dose vitamin K1, also known as phytomenidone. For severe bleeding, we start with high-dose vitamin K1 intravenously, often 10 milligrams, and can repeat it every 6 to 8 hours.
That leads to my next question. Given the prolonged half-life of these agents, is treatment with vitamin K1 also prolonged? And how do you monitor the patient's progress?
Yes, absolutely. This is a critical point. Unlike standard warfarin overdose, where a single dose of vitamin K might suffice, superwarfarin poisoning requires extended duration of high-dose vitamin K1 therapy, often for many weeks or even months. We monitor the patient's progress by frequently checking their PT and INR. We titrate the vitamin K1 dose based on the lab response and the clinical picture. A common pitfall is stopping the vitamin K too early. The patient may appear stable, but once the vitamin K is discontinued, the coagulopathy can rebound because the superwarfarin is still present in the system. This is why close, long-term follow-up and patient education are essential for compliance and safety.
This is incredibly valuable information, Dr. Wang. It sounds like a complex and long-term battle. Before we wrap up, what are the key takeaways for our listeners? What are the practical pearls you'd want them to remember?
My main pearls are these. First, always think of superwarfarin poisoning in any patient with unexplained, persistent, and severe bleeding with a very high INR. Second, the treatment is high-dose vitamin K1, but remember it needs to be for a long duration. Third, frequent monitoring of the patient's coagulation status is non-negotiable because relapses are very common. And finally, patient education is crucial for long-term compliance and safety. These poisonings can be accidental, but in some cases, they are intentional or even covert, so a thorough history is vital.
Dr. Emily Wang, thank you so much for this insightful discussion. Your expertise has been invaluable.
My pleasure, James.